You're listening to Biz-Souls, the business podcast with an edge, hosted by me, Rona Lewis, and Jeffrey Hansler. Tune in for perspectives and discoveries about the changing world of business. It's time to connect to the heart, soul, and humor of how business gets done. Hi-ho, people. Welcome to Biz-Souls. I'm Rona Lewis.
And I'm Jeffrey Hansler, and we get to the heart and soul of business and the people that make it happen. And today
we have 8 people.
We have
8 people today. Go ahead, Jeffrey. I interrupted you.
We have a different venue. We're up at Martin's Cabin up in Big Bear. And we just went.
Well, you are.
Yes,
I'm not.
Yes, I know.
Because I was sick.
Yeah.
I had sickness, and I missed it. Go ahead.
So I've known Martin for quite a few years, since I think 2006. And Martin, I met him at Millennium Mortgage. He had a phenomenal mortgage company with 100 people or so working for you.
Oh, almost 300.
Almost 300 people
Wow.
working for you. And he brought me in to work with him and work with the sales team. And I've never asked this question, though, Martin, because you've done a lot of things. I've never asked this question. What'd you want to be when you grew up?
You know, it's funny. I've had that question a few times. You know, and frankly, I have to say, it's not that impressive. I didn't know. In fact, when I would look at people that had this burning hot white desire in life to do something, they knew. I envied them, to tell you the truth. So I stumbled eventually into business. And I think it was because it encompassed all the things that you could ever want to do in life. And that was just a spectacular opportunity for me. And it was aligned with my core freedom. I mean, my core value, which was freedom. So freedom to do whatever you want.
So you and Jeffrey have that in common, the core value of freedom.
Which is why we're good friends.
There you go. So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did you always work for yourself, or were you in corporate for someone else that made you decide, I do not like when people tell me what to do?
Well, that's a good question, because I think in order to appreciate being an entrepreneur, you have had to have worked for somebody and not always had a great experience. You know, I got fired a couple of times. And I think they were wrong in firing me. I thought I was an exceptional employee. But yeah, you know, you got to learn the ropes a little bit, especially if you're going to go into a particular industry. You got to learn the ropes, and you do that as an employee.
Yeah, I agree. You know, so, and I like you have gotten fired, and sometimes it has nothing to do with you as a person. There's politics. They want their own people. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on. I mean, Jeffrey, you were also moved from
I lasted
accounting to, you know.
I turned down an accelerated PhD to join Apple Computer in the accounting department. I lasted 2 days. And
well done, you.
Yeah. So anyway.
Which is why he has an abacus on his desk. So.
Well, see, here's the deal. I think successful business people, they have vision, right? They have an idea about how things should be done. And, you know, and oftentimes that clashes with the brass. So, you have to zip it all the time, and that's no fun.
Yeah. So how did you get started with your business and grow it to 300 people is huge?
Well, I have to give credit where it's due. Some of my friends brought me into the business. So I started the mortgage business in the early 90s. And it's one of those industries you don't just charge out of college and go, I'm going to be a mortgage banker. You just kind of happen into it. And at the grace of some friends, they coached me along the way. And after 3 years of experience working for somebody else, I branched out on my own. And it was a nice industry. You could do that on your own back then. I'm not so sure today.
Well, not with, I mean, the housing market and all that is so different than it was back then.
Well, it's, the regulations are probably about 5-fold from what they were then. So, and that red tape equates to expense. And so you need a bigger bankroll today to do what I did about 20 years ago.
Yeah. So you've changed since then. What happened? What made you change? And what did you go into? It's a very long question.
We don't have time for all that. Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Well, listen, here's change. I think change is just imposed upon us, right, in life. And one of the most significant life-altering events was really market conditions. And the mortgage banking business is subject to that. You can be cruising right along and have the best running engine in town, yet if the market doesn't really facilitate business, then you don't have any other choice but to reel back. And that was probably a consequential event for us that was 2008.
So one of the things that impressed me about Martin, because I got to see him through that transition, and remember we had the 2008 market crash, and Martin took care of his employees. He was always looking out to be fair, whereas a lot of other companies were just, screwing people over. Martin even helped set up a group that wanted to try something new, and they turned around and took your money, and they turned around. So he's kind to them. They turned around and just foobarred him.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Well,
Martin.
hey, listen, I'm not a cynic, and I don't mean to be bitter. I mean, they're market conditions, and I understand ultimately everybody's got to look out after themselves. So just real quick on that whole Great Recession thing. So here, you build a company up for 10 years, right? And then you got to bring it down. You have to land it in about 18 months. And that's what the trajectory was. And it was just ugly. I feel so bad. I'd have to pull employees into the conference room, and I did mass layoffs. It was just awful. And
sure.
I call that a soft landing. And after every one of those turns, you're like, okay, well, hopefully we can right the ship. And there just wasn't anything in alignment that would allow that to happen. Mm-hmm. And regrettably, a lot of those great staff members that I built wonderful relationships with, they had to go elsewhere. And I was helpful. I tried to help them find as many opportunities as they could,
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, you slid over this. Not only did you help them when they did, stab you in the back, basically, some of them, you let it go. You just didn't hold a grudge. You just moved on. You said, spilt milk. And that is just an amazing quality, to be able to let go and not get sucked into the past and move forward.
Well, I channeled my ire not towards the people that had helped me build Millennium Mortgage. It was more channeled towards the legal system. It was well placed.
All the lawyers.
We go on that subject matter for a long time too. But I will just say this: it's part of the American legal system. It's also that legal system that allows you to build these wonderful companies and be independent. Yet at the same time, it is a form of a shakedown system in America, and we were subject to that. And it was painful at the time, but hey, it's also just a part of doing business.
Right. So what shenanigans are you up to now? What are you doing now?
It's funny. So we talked about a lot of staff. One of my objectives is that I shall be successful in the absence of a big staff, a lot of overhead and all that.
Right.
And, I got to say, in today's economy, especially with the advent of the internet and where it's taken us today, all the tools that are available to us, the ability to hire talent across the globe, right, without having to have them put them on payroll is a real true advantage. And I think a lot of smart entrepreneurs recognize that today.
So, Martin, in hiring people across the globe, you're not meeting with them. You don't get a big character assessment about them. How do you go about hiring people from, other countries?
Well, that's a good question. One of the sacrifices is that you miss out on developing the right culture within an organization. And you certainly have that ability when people are under your nose, under your roof, so to speak. So you sacrifice that away, but at the same time, you do pick up some real significant skill sets and attributes in the staff that you hire abroad or virtually, let's say. But the other thing is management, you have to then manage by the numbers rather than managing by subjective nature stuff, which I'm more inclined to do. I like performance-based organizations that deal in meritocracy.
I work with some organizations that do have people around the country, around the globe, and they all are remote. And their biggest issue, which I help with through Play, is that the remote people can be siloed. There's not a lot of feeling of connection, and it is possible remotely. What do you do, if you do anything, to keep your people talking and engaged?
Well, can I come in real quick?
Yeah, sure.
So, Rona, you're talking about building a company culture, and a lot of the people you contract with, you're not trying to bind them into the culture. So.
Oh, so what you're saying? Okay, I misunderstood. So you're just doing like one-offs and helping, not like part-time or just on certain projects.
I did say that the loss of culture, cohesive culture, is a shortcoming associated with virtual hiring. And I think that has an impact, a negative one, not having that. So what can you do? You mentioned that siloing staff. Well, I got to ask you, have you been on Facebook and Reddit and so forth? good gosh, these people get on social forums. You just create an intranet within an organization where people communicate, and they'll take off with that. The good thing is that type of forum holds people accountable, so you generally get pretty professional and productive conversations going, as opposed to sideline stuff that I talk would be the water cooler talk or even the smokers talk when they'd assemble outside.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk on Slack. I work on Slack with some of my clients, and that definitely helps. I just wanted to see what your answer was. So can I ask what you use them for now? What's your business now that you've transferred?
Well, we're doing digital marketing services. So we're working in doing affiliate sales and also doing lead generation for various industries, largely financial industries, the industries that I've been involved in before.
That makes sense. Makes sense.
So if you
Yeah,
think
and
about that, so I don't have a lot of full-time employees. I really don't need them.
right.
If you consider it for them, a lot of it is gig work, and that just works fine. I really like it because in the past, in order to make a buck, I had to build massive infrastructure, and it was and I wasn't financed with a whole lot of money initially, so I was working on retained earnings. So it was like one step
Right.
forward, two step forwards in infrastructure, and then kind of reap the harvest and so forth. And that in that go stage, it was a gradual growth for the organization. But today, I do like the lead gen business because you're able to invest $1 today, and certainly within 30 days, you can cash in on it.
Fantastic.
So
Very smart.
the lead gen business, which side of it? Because I get emails all the time about people
Some
saying,
of those
"Oh,
are
we have a
mine."
list." I haven't seen your email. Do you use a different email?
Well, I don't want to give away any
Okay, okay.
esoteric trade secrets here.
Okay.
Well, I guess we're not going to ask for any tips at the end
That's
of
right.
this.
You're not going to get any tips. So that'll be interview number 2 or 3. Okay, and it could be a
Okay.
subscriber based one, right? No, it is an omni-channel approach, and it's dependent upon the product or service that you're selling, of course, too, because obviously you're going to find your demographics in various areas depending on what the service is that you're selling. But
Sure.
I will say cold email, Jeffrey, is a very viable channel within that realm of marketing options.
Yeah, I think that's the way, to your point, that's the way to go today. Nobody answers their phone. I think that's a bit of an antiquated way to go. And I think emails are a lot quicker too.
Well, they are, and I mean, it's a big numbers game, and
Yeah.
you have to be careful not to abuse the channel like it
Right.
does get abused, because obviously the ISPs are out there with their spam blockers and
Right.
working just as hard as we are to get through to the inbox. So that is a
Right.
challenge. So when you get in, you want to be quick and to the point, and hopefully you resonate with the person you're trying to reach.
Excellent.
So Martin, I just said, it's you can't call. I mean, most of my career was working the phones, and it's absolutely true. You never get anybody live. So is that part of are you doing live calls?
Well, it's interesting. I have a long history in telemarketing. We did a lot in the financial space. Very effective if you have well-trained, effective staff members doing it. But it's interesting today, you don't have much of that. And here's why.
Right.
This generation hides behind their device, right? I mean, that's
Right.
it. I even do like personal sales or whatever, and people don't want to get on the phone.
Right.
So I think that's a medium that is highly overlooked, and it could be used well. In fact, I mean, the only ones that really seem to be very good at it are the people that are pushing political campaigns.
Right. Well, and then we just hang up on them. So,
Yeah,
or they're
I do.
recorded.
Yeah, and I always, it's funny when I get a telemarketer, I try and kiss them off, politely. But a lot of times I try and turn it around, and I try and sell them on something. I think that's always pretty fun.
Wow.
Well, that's like the old Jerry Lewis bit where he's like, he'll get a call and he's like, "Where can I call you back after this?" No, well, I'm having dinner, so I would like to interrupt your dinner. Things like that. Like, yeah, that's not.
That's already pretty tough on them, but most telemarketers are pretty respectful. Back in the day, I used to get the telemarketing from the Wall Street guys, straight out of the Bronx or something. It was always like,
Right.
"Hey, Martin, are you in the market?" And I'm like, "Oh God, not this call again."
Hey, don't knock New Yorkers.
I know. I would hire them in my telemarketing department.
Too funny.
What are you saying? We're pushy?
You're effective.
I think we are.
So
We're just straightforward.
yeah,
Anyway, sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
that's okay. That's okay. So look, starting a company, going just in general, starting a company, you get employees in and they come in at different stages, and all of them think they're indispensable. And I'm not, I'm as guilty of it too. When I was working the office, I thought I was the best person there. So they just
He
don't
still does.
understand. They
Just saying.
yes, I do. They just don't understand all the work that went in and all the pieces that had to be put together. When you're alone or when you're working nights or you're giving up seeing your kids. they just don't get that, and then they come in and they start making demands. How do you curb that?
Well, I used to get offended by it. I felt it was a personal affront because I wasn't being appreciated. But the truth is they just don't know. They don't know. And so today what I would say is, okay, let me take you back to when I started this company. It was just me, okay? And all the blood and sweat I did. Okay, so I come home and I'd have dinner with the kids at 7 o'clock. I get back in the car and I go back and I crunch data until 2 a.m. in the morning so that I get the marketing campaign out the next morning. So it was those hours that you invested, not to mention the family members that you tap for money, right? So where were you when I was doing all the heavy lifting early on? So I think if you convey that to them, they kind of get it. But hey, it's human nature. Everybody wants to feel very valuable, right? So unfortunately, when I'd fire some people, they would retaliate and tell me that they built this company and they were indispensable and blah, blah, blah. And, and I would try to give them the props and acknowledgement that they deserved. But at the same time, they couldn't be a part of the organization anymore. And that's one of the toughest things is to fire people. I hate to say
I've done it. It's not easy.
But
it's not easy.
It is important. I look back at my company, like I said, almost 300 employees. And Jeffrey, you were working with me on training a lot of those staff members. And I look at it and I go, well, the key is to get people in the right seat on the bus, if you will. And that is very challenging. I think over the years I've gotten good at assessing the talent associated with the demand in the organization. But it's taken a long time for me to achieve those types of realizations, if you will.
Well, yeah, and that just comes with experience,
Right.
Yeah, and then the next thing is you got to be mean. you got to be willing to cut the staff that's not getting the job done.
Oh, I don't know if mean is the right word. I just think you have to understand, what you need to do. It's just business,
Well, it is
just being straightforward.
It is mean. I mean, a lot of companies will have a hatchet man, or they'll be so insensitive that they just send a letter to somebody, right? I always felt that I needed to look somebody in the eye and tell them what's going down and why it's going down, and then try and offer some help, maybe because I know a lot of people in the industry, there could be a better place for them at another organization,
Sure. Well, I think that's being respectful. Mm-hmm. At least look, it's not the right place and the right time for you, and let me see what I can do to help. Uh-huh. I think that shows a lot of emotional intelligence because you are aware of the other people's emotions. So, well done, you.
Yeah. Well, one of the problems is your organization, especially nowadays, have to change constantly. And back then, people would bring me in to work with the sales force, and you were asking them to change their behaviors that weren't working for them. Except I would see that it wasn't working for them, except they were more like chimpanzees pushing buttons. And so they don't know which button works. So they're afraid to give up anything. And to put them in a spot and trying to get them to follow a new process or a new way of thinking is really difficult. And I think it's even more difficult now.
Well, yeah, if you go all the way down the ranks and try and train everybody, it is a monumental task. And it's never done, right?
Right.
It's never done. I think one of the most difficult things for a large or mid-sized or large organization is change leadership. And you need some really strong, inspirational people at the top that believe in the change, number one. And then number two, that they convey that belief amongst the staff and get them to do the hard work. I mean, one of my favorite sayings is people don't change until the pain of not changing exceeds the pain of change. Now, let's unpack that for a minute, okay?
Yeah.
Basically, everyone loves to sit on the couch, right? But when you get tired of that big ass belly and you're thinking, okay, I got to get off this couch and get into the gym and work out and change my lifestyle, they finally do it. But, hey, change is really difficult.
It is.
You're better off finding people, like a relationship, finding people that already have the skill set you're looking for rather than having to feel you need to develop it while you're on your payroll.
Well, that's actually a great tip and a very silky segue into a couple of other tips that you might give to either leaders who have their own company or employees who want to perhaps go out on their own. Any good information that you want to impart?
Well, let's talk about staff. If you want to be a good employer, good staff, you want to get a job. Basically, you got to show energy, and you got to show that you're willing to do whatever it takes, right, to be successful in your job and shine within your organization. I mean, you really got to hitch your caboose to the train, and you're all in on what the interests of the company, what their interests are. And then in turn, you shall make the compensation, you'll get the promotions and raises and everything else that you're looking for. I truly believe that, unless you're encountering a really bad boss. As far as entrepreneurs go, I mean, there's a number of key skill sets. One is vision. You have to have a great vision. And don't get tripped up on vision when you start, because believe me, you're going to be thinking you're going here, and then that is going to slowly shift, and you may end up someplace completely over here as the opportunities present themselves. So you have to pay attention.
So you have to be fluid.
Yeah, fluid. You have to have belief. You have to have conviction. You have to have grit. It's nice to have some money to get things off the ground. But, I've seen people do things too with just $1,000 in the bank account,
So if you were going to build a major company again, would you build it in California, or have the laws changed so much in California?
Well, yes and no. California has great talent. I mean, you can't ignore that. But then again, in a virtual environment, that staff can come from anywhere in the country or outside. California's taxes are really high. I mean, let's just face it. If you're really going to hit it out of the park, I think the tax rate's like 13%. Couple that with, Fed rate in the high 20s, and, good gosh. And, forget the sales tax. I think in LA County, it's 11%. So I would, if you want to live here, you're going to have to be a California company, because if you're going to be an S corp, your taxes are going to flow through to you, and guess what? You're going to be paying California. So there it is, yes and no. But I live in California, and I don't think I'd reside anyplace else for the foreseeable future.
Very nice here.
Yeah,
we like it. All right, I think I know that great. Martin, you have a time thing going on.
Yeah.
So we don't want to keep you. And will you come back and play with us some more and talk about specifics?
Oh, you want the secret sauce? Okay, I will.
Great.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. All right. Excellent. All right. Wait, you're Martin. You're Jeffrey. I know the difference. My coffee is
kicked in.
Working. So Jeffrey, anything else? Any other comments,
that's
questions?
Great. This is really wonderful.
Yeah, thanks, you guys.
And Rona, you really took the ball on asking the questions because
because you're still waking up. That's it.
You've been listening to the Biz-Souls podcast with your hosts Rona Lewis and Jeffrey Hansler. Did you have fun? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Talk to you next week.